Hey, everybody. Welcome into the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by CLNS Media and our good friends at Prize Picks and All Good Home Improvements. My pleasure to welcome back to the pod this week, Geoff Butch Hobson of Bengals.com. We're going to talk about what the Bengals were able to accomplish this past spring in the OTAs and the just completed mandatory minicamp inside and outside Paycor Stadium. How you doing, Butch?
Trags, in the wake of the Rafael Devers trade, I'm not doing well.
But yeah, I'm sorry.
It's good to be with you, though.
Maybe we can talk about that on the back end of this podcast because it's huge news and it does involve arguably your second favorite team. Let's put it outside the Bengals realm. It's the favorite team you root for.
Correct.
How's
outside
that?
The Bengals realm. That's perfectly well. Once I take a pill, I'll be able to talk about it. Yes.
Okay. Let's get to what the Bengals were able to accomplish. And in spite of the contractual negotiations and the absence of Trey Hendrickson and first-round pick Shemar Stewart at the mandatory minicamp last week, the Bengals were adamant from Zac Taylor on down that they were able to have a very productive minicamp and offseason. Ted Karras told me last week as the players were beginning to set out of Paycor Stadium and start their summer break that this is the most productive offseason that he is, offseason that he has had in the 4 years he's been in the Bengals organization. And he was asked why by Kelsey Conway of the Cincinnati Enquirer. And he said, just because of the attitude of the players and coaches, they were able to really work hard, work together on new things that have been installed in the Bengals system, especially in the trenches. And I know you mentioned this, Butch, in your piece this week about Ted Karras being able to draw upon those coaches who can come in with a new perspective because there's been turnover on the coaching staff, look at things from 10,000 feet and maybe have a different perspective.
Yeah, I think, credit to Zac Taylor, who, I'm sure he's been hearing it, from everybody for the last 3 years. You got to get off to a good start. Credit to him. He mixed things up, obviously the most visible changes. Obviously, he's got a new defense. He's got a new offensive line coach. But some of the more subtle differences, he put more players in front of the room more often, so they could get to know their teammates better. He's big about his team being connected. I think he felt like this was a doubling down of that. So. It used to be for the last couple of, springs, they would have a very brief team meeting once a week. But this year they met every day and they met for longer. So guys could either tell their stories or get up there and, kind of walk through the offense and the defense. So it went from, visible to subtle changes. And, I think, when you have an offensive line coach and a different defensive coordinator, you're obviously going to have different things. The playbook's going to be different. And I think that added a little bit to what Ted was talking about was, a little bit of a fresh start. And I think, too, you look at it from a coach's, the coaches got refreshed, too, because Zac did not hire a run game coordinator to replace offensive line coach Frank Pollock. It's now really the running game is by committee. Obviously, offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher and Zac have the final say, but more collaboration, from the coaches like, Justin Hill at running back, wide receivers, coach Troy Walters, running back coach Justin Hill, and tight ends coach, James Casey. And you get more ideas, and you're just doing things a little bit differently. And I think you could sense that from both the coaches and the players that it was a little bit of a fresh approach for them.
You mentioned the words by committee. In baseball, as you well know, sometimes when you say that regarding a bullpen, that doesn't always turn out so well. Why might it turn out well for the Bengals? Give me a reason or a couple of reasons, Geoff, why this could turn out to be a very positive thing. I know you wrote about this on Bengals.com in terms of the running game getting a committee and a fresh approach. and why that could be critical to the Bengals offense next year?
Well, I think different guys have different approaches. They come from it differently, and I think I think they feel like that helps them in whatever changes they have to make, getting maybe getting more input from a guy like Justin Hill, who's the running backs coach. And for Hill, it kind of expands his game because he also gets more into the passing game too. It makes him a better, more all around coach. I think too, guys like Casey, guys like Troy Walters, who's been an offensive coordinator in college. He was a finalist for the Frank Broyles Award before he joined the Bengals.
Right.
In college, I think they bring different perspective to things, and I think I think in by committee sometimes is you don't have any, you don't that means you don't have. If you have a bullpen by committee, that means you don't have anybody. But I think when it comes to ideas, it's a lot different than that because everybody has different ideas. They come from different perspectives, and I think that and the fact that they've all been together in the same offense, I think is really that makes it even better because they've lived through the mistakes, they've lived through where they have to get better, and they know. And so I just think it's an interesting approach. I know the first team I ever covered in Cincinnati, that's how Sam Weiss did it.
Right.
He did it by committee. He called it like I can't remember quite the words, but it was along the lines of an explosion of ideas. And I think they same kind of staff in that it was experienced. They'd been through the same thing with this team. They had seen the team evolve. That 90 team was a lot different than the 88 team, and they adjusted. And that 90 team wasn't nearly as talented as that 88 team, but yet they came within 5 minutes of going to an AFC championship game. A lot of coaching power on that. So, I think it's going to be a fun year. You throw in what they're doing on defense with Al Golden. It's going to be a fun year to watch from a coaching perspective.
How can Chase Brown become more effective, efficient, explosive in this offense? I think he had a good year last year. I think Joe Burrow acknowledged that last week when he was asked about Chase Brown. But the Bengals and Joe Burrow have indicated before that running game does need to take that next step. Is it just a matter of being more consistent? We've heard the term more explosive the last several years when talking about the run game. What is the next step for Chase Brown?
I mean, I think it's just I think it's they're adjusted the game. I don't think Chase has to take it the next step. I think probably the scheme has to take the next step to match what Chase is doing. And Justin Hill and Dan Pitcher acknowledged that. The Chase Brown in the opener was not the Chase Brown who got hurt against Denver. Different player. A fine player, one of the most productive backs in the league. And I think they're adjusting to him rather than the other way around. So, I think they want to get him. I think they want to get him the ball in quick hit situations. Like Teddy said, take advantage of his speed. And I think that's going north and south, man. I think a lot of quick hitters up the middle, off tackle. They want to take advantage of their of those two tackles, those two big tackles, Mims and Orlando Brown Jr. And I think Chase is at his best when he's going north and south, and quick hitters. Let's go.
So you brought up Sam Weiss, and I don't know if this is fair or unfair to Chase Brown, but do you see some of James Brooks in what he's able to do, not as just as a running back, but also as a pass catcher?
Yeah, I mean, I think Brooks could have been a wide receiver. You know what I mean? So I think he was kind of on another level. But I think Chase gives you what Brooks did is at any point Brooks could break open the game via a pass or a run. And Chase has that ability. And I think he also has the ability. Here's a guy, last year he was staying after on Wednesdays in Justin Hill's office to go over just on third down and go over his pass protection. Now you throw the fact that Samaje Perine is in there, who's, a terrific pass protecting guy. Chase is gonna, I think it's a tremendous thing for Chase to be able to watch Samaje go to work, because Samaje is, so great at doing the little things, But yeah, Brooks, you don't want to compare anybody to James Brooks, right, Trags? He's one of the great, That's not fair to
It's not, but I think for years and years and years, Bengal fans who remember that era would love to see another James Brooks style back in the offense.
Well, there's no question that Chase is that guy, because I think the more snaps he takes, he'll be more comfortable in the slot, which JB always did. JB was, you never really knew where JB was going to line up, and I think, Chase is doing the same thing. Like I said, to me, the big thing that they both have in common, that JB and Chase have in common, is they can go. That they can break open a game with either as a catcher or as a running back on one play, and that's just huge. And I think Chase is getting to the point where Joe can put him anywhere. I think he feels comfortable with putting them anywhere. And so I think they've got I think Bengal fans are I know this. Yes. Chase is 5'10", and he's a little bit bigger than JB, but Chase is putting up big back numbers. This has always been known as a big back franchise. He's putting up numbers that other big backs have put up, so it's really been fun to watch. It was fun to watch him last year just really come into his own. He got better every time he touched the ball.
All right, he is Geoff Hobson. He does a fabulous job covering the Bengals, all things Bengals related in the NFL for Bengals.com. Want to tell you about Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Do you know ball? There's only one series left in the basketball playoffs, and the championship is officially on the line. That means time is running out for you to put your final takes to the test on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. You can combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. Sign up today and get $50 cash instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Every Friday, remember, is Flex Friday. Make sure you opt in and tap the checkbox, in your lineup builder to be eligible for protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board. If your lineup does not win, you get your net losses back in promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. Download the app today and use that code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Back with Geoff Hobson of Bengals.com. All right, we've talked about the run game. I want to talk about something else that we witnessed in the locker room, and that was on Thursday. Dax Hill holding court with reporters, and I don't think it's any secret. Dax Hill is one of the keys to the reshaped Al Golden defense this year. First of all, we want to make sure that Dax Hill can, the Bengals want to make sure, I should say, that Dax Hill can get on the field. He's healthy. But secondly, he's in a position where he's comfortable. Where does all of that stand in your estimation, Geoff?
I think you're looking at probably the next slot corner, I would think. Looking at his versatility, I'm assuming he's going to, his rehab is, he's with one of the best rehab guys in the game, Nick Cosgray. Look at how many guys he's brought back from ACLs. But when Dax went down, he was the best cornerback they had. And he played
on the outside, though.
Right. That's right. But he also played a little bit inside as well too. He got hurt playing inside. So there's not a if you want to know how well he played the inside, go turn on his college tape. So I think they feel like that, he's a guy that can play both. I think then that's kind of how they're shaping it. They want their corners to be interchangeable, but I think Hill is a special guy. He's done it on a high level. Granted it was in college, but I think they feel like he's a weapon. That he's more than I think they feel like he's more than an outside corner who can slip into the nickel. I think they see him kind of as a weapon. He can blitz. He can line him up in different spots. Maybe a bigger Mike Hilton. A bigger, faster Mike Hilton. So to me, he's a key to this defense. I think, talking to Geno Stone a little bit, he said that, and I think I mentioned this the last time I was on with you. He said the Al scheme reminds him of the kind of things they did when he was in Baltimore, when he led the AFC with 7 interceptions, and he was working under Mike McDonald, the current Seahawks head coach. He was the coordinator in Baltimore. And I think the takeaway thing. I think the takeaway thing is a big thing with Al. A lot of that is kind of, lining up in different spots, kind of deking out the quarterback, and I think that's where they think Dax can be a weapon. Remember, he played a full season in this league as a safety as well. I think, which really, kind of helps lining up in different spots.
You bring up that position, and if there's one position in talking with people inside the Bengals, outside the Bengals, fans that they have concern about on that defense, it's not necessarily the edge rusher position, believe it or not. I think people are more concerned about the safety position, the back end of the defense. Is Geno Stone going to take that next step in his second season with the Bengals? Where is Jordan Battle's progress? And if those two can't go, you're looking at Dejon Anthony, Tyson Anderson, and a name that Dax Hill brought up that really it generated a buzz on the X last week. PJ Jules. What can you tell us about PJ Jules?
Don't know much about him. Don't know much about him. I think that I don't think we probably thought much about him until Dax mentioned his name.
Yes,
and he's a guy. He's one of these guys. He's always there. They joke with him, that he sleeps there because he's there all the time. He's a hard worker, and it's obvious by what Dax talked, what Dax said. You're not going to keep 5 safeties,
right.
So. But I think that to me the interesting guy is, and PJ is a hardworking guy who's an interesting sword who I think is impressed people. The other guy I think you have to throw in the same guy from his class. PJ was last year was a undrafted free agent. Dejon Anthony was in the was in the 7th round, and I think he's a guy. The more reps he gets, people talk about him as well. And I think he's, he didn't play much from scrimmage after the Kansas City game. And, you got to be careful not to brand the guy for one play.
Let me jump in here, Butch, because I mentioned this to Richard Skinner. He was on the Jungle Roar pod last week. I think that Dejon Anthony was probably half a click to a click away from having his whole story of his rookie year completely change if that was not pass interference against the Chiefs. And that seems unfair to me, Geoff. I don't know about you, but to be that close to making a sensational play that would have totally changed the narrative of his rookie year, I think I don't understand why he hasn't gotten that second chance.
Yeah, I don't know why he disappeared either. But I think that here's another guy who I think they're kind of excited about. What can he do in the slot? Where can you line him up? You might be able, you can kind of hide him a little bit. He's fast. He can cover. So he's an interesting guy to watch. And to me, guys like Hill and Anthony and Josh Newton, who, people rave about Josh Newton. I mean, they're
one of the best tacklers on the team.
He had a good spring. He can play, he can line up anywhere. So I think, Cam Taylor-Britt. Cam Taylor-Britt said, hey, he played the slot in college, and say what you want about Cam Taylor-Britt. Okay. There's there's two guys in the National Football League since 2022, since he's been drafted, who have at least 7 interceptions and 33, I think 33 tackles, and it's Taylor Britt and the Defensive Player of the Year this year, the guy from Denver, the corner from Denver. I'm losing my mind here, but Cam Taylor Britt can play, so I mean, and he got benched twice last year. I get it, but I think
Pat Surtain, by the way,
Pat Surtain, right? And the thing is, and Surtain has 1 pick six, Cam Taylor Britt has 2, and so I think we're talking about the safeties, and rightfully so. But I just think Al's had all this time to look at them, and his conclusion was, they didn't draft one and they didn't sign one. So that kind of tells you what he thinks, how Geno and Jordan Battle fit into what he's going to do. Will it work out? Who knows? But I think if it had been another regime, yeah, maybe they would have attacked safety. But I think you have to at this point give Al a benefit of the doubt. He had off season to go chase guys and didn't. So
he is Geoff Hobson of Bengals.com. Want to tell you about one of the best home improvement companies out there, All Good Home Improvements. All Good has been helping homeowners, including yours truly, for 32 years. When looking for a home improvement company, the number one quality that they are looking for, and me and the lovely Deborah Ann were looking for, is trust. For the last 32 years, All Good has been trusted to help homeowners replace their windows, install new vinyl siding, install new gutters, and professionally install a new roof. When we needed a new roof on our home here in the greater Cincinnati area, we called up Ed Grant and the great folks at All Good, and they definitely took great care of us from start to finish, from the estimate to the workers coming out and seeing what kind of timeline it would take to finish the job, to the estimate, of course. It was all spot on. And that is what I'm talking about in terms of trust. All Good offers interest-free financing with payments starting at just $99 a month. And also important, no money down. All of All Good's products are professionally installed and backed by both a material and labor warranty. Right now, All Good is offering a 50% off sale, or buy one, get one free. To schedule a free in-home consultation, simply call 513-247-2900. That's 513-247-2900, or simply go to myallgoodhome.com. Back with Geoff Hobson of Bengals.com. What about Al Golden? I'll tell you something, Geoff, that stuck out to me last week when he was in front of the podium holding court on Wednesday. He used a term, and it was like neon lights to me. The tyranny of comfort. I don't want my players, in other words, I don't want our players to be comfortable. I want them out of their comfort levels so that when an occasion arises in a game, they're prepared for it. I think that got to some of what we've been hearing about with Al Golden, moving his cornerbacks all over in different positions, moving the defensive linemen in different positions. He wants to avoid the tyranny of being comfortable. I love that line from him.
I compare him to Mike Zimmer. Now, I don't know how Mike Zimmer would phrase tyranny of comfort. It might be a little bit spiced, but it's the same thing. It's the same concept. It's Zimmer always kept you on his toes, and so does Al. And I just have these not flashbacks, but I mean Trags, how important Mike Zimmer was.
Yeah,
for his team.
Absolutely.
He not only changed the defense, he changed the culture, and over there on that side of the ball on that spread. And that, I think, is Al is in that mold, like Zim. He's had great success elsewhere, and the players respect that. Like Zim, high standard, attention to detail. So I just, I know, people are, they're upset at safety. They didn't go after another corner. And I say, yeah, they made a big free agent acquisition on defense, Al Golden. And I think the two position coaches he brought in are very respected guys in the league, veterans of the league, in Jerry Montgomery up front and Mike Hodges at linebacker. But again, I think back to what Al Golden did for this franchise and how he changed the defense, and pretty much Zimmer, as all good coaches do, he changed it even though he didn't have. He had the same players that other guys were working with pretty much. I mean, there wasn't any, the one big ad they gave Zimmer was Antoine Odom, and he was hurt. So, he was doing it with guys that other people had. So I think, I kind of, I expect Al to have that same kind of an impact.
On offensive side of the ball, what have you noticed about Scott Peters so far, Butch?
Very hands-on, has a plan. Knows how to execute it. I think one of the more interesting things I saw one time in the office of Mike McCarthy, Scott Peters' assistant offensive line coach. They were talking to Jerry Montgomery, the defensive line coach. I thought that was rather interesting. I think Scott comes from what I've noticed out there. He's hands-on, and the players gravitate to his not just his techniques, but the way he teaches them. So I think that's the one thing I've noticed. Where guys like, I think, Cordell Volson, the left guard who was benched last December, I think he feels like he's got a new lease on life because, as Ted Karras said, you've got a new guy coming in, looking at it with a 10,000-foot view, and also they gave Scott Peters two pretty good linemen too, in Dylan Fairchild, who I think, Dylan Fairchild and Jalen Rivers, the 3rd and 5th round picks respectively, have no idea what they're going to. I mean, we don't know what they're going to do until they put on the pads. But I think, the way they've responded, they've put in Fairchild right smack into the starting lineup. They've got Rivers penciled in right away as a swing tackle. So, I think they're different. They look different the way they're coached and the way they're constituted.
Want to go back real quick to the defense, and everybody's wondering about Trey Hendrickson and Shemar Stewart.
Right.
I think they're both going to eventually wind up on the field in training camp. There were reports out there. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reported over the weekend that talks have resumed between Trey Hendrickson and the Cincinnati Bengals. I take that as nothing but a positive sign, because if there was no hope, there'd be no talks taking place. I think it's just a matter of the numbers. I think they'll get crunched out. And Dave Lapham, your cohort inside the building there, does a great job with Dan Horde on the Inside the Booth podcast for the Bengals, brought this up, and I thought it was a great point. When talking about Shemar Stewart, and for that matter, Trey Hendrickson, he said, don't focus always on the money. Focus on terms and conditions. And what this usually comes down to, especially when you're talking about a rookie contract, are the terms and conditions. And I think at this particular point, Shemar Stewart wants to play football. I believe that. I sincerely think that in his heart of hearts, he wants to be on the field showing what he can do. And to that point, that is my optimism for thinking. When people say, well, why are you so optimistic, Trags? Well, it's because I think Shemar Stewart, it's a rookie deal. I think that eventually gets done, as many people inside the Bengals have told me. Name the last time there was a holdout, in this particular era. I don't think this will be a holdout. I think that gets done, and I think Trey Hendrickson gets done. Your thoughts, Butch, real quick?
Yeah. I think when opening day comes, Trey Hendrickson is going to be lining up at right end, trying to get that 36th sack in the last 3 years. Who knows? Stewart might be on the other side. So I think that's what's in the plan. They've got Chase in the fold. They've got Higgins in the fold. So I think that by the time this thing kicks off, they're going to be intact.
I believe that also, Butch. I think that at this point, the most important factor is having Joe Burrow healthy. And when you look back at all of these cold starts, the 1-11 mark in the first two games of the Zac Taylor era, how many times have they had Joe Burrow at full strength?
Well, and how many times have they had Joe Burrow and his receivers?
Correct.
And this is the first time since Joe's been a pro, second spring in a row, he's got his top guys. I mean, you got to throw Gesicki in there. First year, I think Joe mentioned this when we asked him. The last time we talked to him, he's not taking a tight end under his wing like he was with Hayden Hurst and Irv Smith. He's not. He's had Chase and Higgins for the whole time. That wasn't true last year. So, that's just, that's so. Then you throw in the fact, 22 he was healthy. I think he was coming off a 22, and it's only 2 times he's really come off.
But then in 22, Butch, he had the appendicitis.
Right, but I'm talking about the spring.
Oh, right, correct.
I'm talking about the spring. So
sure,
and so, and it just seems like it doesn't matter either. It could be appendicitis, it could be a knee, it could be God knows what, but the man just comes out flinging. I mean, his numbers, his no matter what situation he's in, no matter what the offseason is or where his team is, his numbers are just, he comes back from a wrist injury and has one of the greatest seasons a quarterback ever has. I mean, you can say this, you can say that, but just look at the numbers. The guy's the most accurate quarterback in the history of the game. And it's my favorite stat. I just can't say it enough.
Yes.
68.6. Look it up.
And it's hard to believe that he's more accurate than Kenny Anderson, who set for years and years and years in the 70s and 80s, set the standard in the NFL for throwing accuracy. I'm going to finish up on this note. Zac Taylor, we're focusing on ourselves. Another story from Geoff Hobson up on Bengals.com. Why is it, this leads into the training camp being moved, practices being moved from the afternoon to the morning. I think that's a great idea because I think players, I think you and me as reporters, I think we're all fresher in the morning. And then when we're fresher, things seem to soak in better and we comprehend it better. It sticks with us better. I think moving training camp practice to the morning is a good idea. But why is Zac Taylor talking so much about the team focusing on themselves, starting with training camp?
It's great for the scribes because I think we'll now get them
awesome.
Lunch, right? So
awesome.
instead of writing at 8:00, we'll be writing at 2:00, which is so. But anyway, that's selfish. I think the what Zac said was focusing on ourselves, which I thought since the pandemic, every year they've scrimmaged somebody up into the preseason, into a preseason game. The Rams one year, and then last year they did twice. So they're looking at results, and what did they get out of it? They got the poor. They did all this stuff with another team, and what? They still get off to not a great start, and hell, they lost 2 guys in Chicago for the year. Remember Dante Smith and Chris Evans.
Yes.
So I think all this stuff went into it, and and Zac I think concluded, look, let's just focus on ourselves instead of having to deal with another team coming in and maybe and I think he alluded to that where he said from the Philly game, which is the preseason opener, to the next game, I think is 11 days, I think, and he said from the 7th to the 18th. 6 padded practices by themselves. And I think that kind of excites them a little bit that, they don't have to worry about, because you still have to at least prepare for somebody, even if it is just a practice, that takes time to prepare for another team. And it also takes away from stuff maybe you want to work on, So I think, I think they looked at it, they self-scouted, and they said, look, let's if we got a rookie like Dylan Fairchild, let's give him all of our intention, instead of maybe, that joint practice, you only give him 75% or 60%. So, I think that's the message is let's look at ourselves and not, fool with anything else. And I think it's, that comes into play too, I think, in the extended team meetings he's had too. That plays into that. Let's find out who each other's, let's find out who each other is.
All right. He is Geoff Hobson. I want to know, going to finish up on this question. What are your big plans for the next 5 weeks of vacation?
Just going to go back to the ancestral home a little bit, back to the
Rafael Devers Red Sox.
I'll be driving right to the mushroom cloud. I won't need the GPS Trags. I can just it's horrific. It's a terrible
Mookie Betts all over again, like you said at the top.
Now, Trags, I can say, you were there in 2004, so you're the perfect guy I can talk to. They're trying to compare it to Nomar. It's not Nomar because they had Ortiz, they had Manny Ramirez, and
this is all about dumping the salary, and they're very unhappy with a guy that has been nothing but cantankerous and a negative influence in the clubhouse.
It was partly there, but that was a lot of that was their fault. They didn't talk to him during the offseason and said, "Hey, we might sign a third baseman."
So I don't normally come down on when it comes to the Red Sox. I don't normally come down on the team side here.
Right.
But when you've got a $330 million player and you ask him to change positions or do something where a team needs you and could play that, and you can conceive of him playing that position, and he says no, you got to wonder about his commitment. He's getting paid $330 million, Butch.
I hear you, but it's also 2025 and not 2005. And as you know, it's a different brand of player out there. It's a different brand.
I understand.
And the other thing, let me get back to 04, Trags. You were there, right?
Yep.
Rafi's a DH. Nomar was a shortstop. When they got rid of Nomar, they became a better club defensively. Cabrera had as much to do with that world championship as anybody else. He played a nifty shortstop. Rafi's their best hitter.
That's undeniable. That is unquestioned. He is their most productive, feared hitter in that lineup. Maybe Jaron Duran, but no, Rafael Devers is it. And
they've lost 17 one-run games. Now, how many are they going to lose?
We'll see. We will see. The Reds play them in a couple of weeks at Fenway. As a matter of fact, are you going to those games? By the way,
I am not going to go to those Trags. I do have a. I'm all lined up for the Portland Sea Dogs though. Have a game next week. We'll the guys they traded Rafi for will probably be there. So
that is a distinct possibility. All right, we're going to wrap up on that note. I want to thank Geoff Hobson for joining me on this edition of the Jungle Roar podcast, bringing all sorts of knowledge to the table as he always does. You can follow his great material up on Bengals.com. He's got a great story up there right now. Zac Taylor throwing up. I had it up on my screen and it just went away. Zac Taylor throws another changeup as Bengals look to bolt out of the box. We're focusing on ourselves. Be sure to check out that stuff up on Bengals.com from Geoff Hobson. Well, for Geoff Hobson, my name is Mike Petralia Trags, and for our great sponsors, All Good Home Improvement and Prize Picks, and our great people at CLNS Media, I want to thank you for downloading this episode of the Jungle Roar Pod. And until next time, keep that jungle roaring.